Okay, so thanks for letting me do this. So I ran a lot of scans, did a lot of legwork on it, and everything came up clean. I mean, your website from the hundreds, I don't know if it's hundreds, but at least dozens of websites that I looked at, I'd say your website's on the better than average side. So there's definitely there's definitely always things to do. And I'll highlight the things I think are the most important if you only have a little bit of time or you only want to take a couple of action. I'll highlight the two things that I think are critical for you to do, and then we'll go through the other stuff. So overall, you came up, just probably better than average, than other websites that I've worked with. So here we go. I'll try to go as quickly as possible. I spent a lot of time on this, but it just rambles on and on and on. So rather than spend too much time on it, hopefully I'll get this done in about 30 minutes. If there's anything you need, maybe even sooner, if there's anything you want more specific information on, let me know and we can do a phone call or I can record a video or we can just chat about it and I'd be happy to explain it more. But I know this can be long-winded, so I don't want to waste too much of your time. So this is just a graph, a chart, how hacked WordPress sites get compromised. This is a chart from I think 2021, but I haven't found a new one, but it's been the same from 2015 to 2021 approximately. So I'm sure I assume it's the same thing now. The most prominent way is through plugins, right? Plugins that are outdated, plugins with zero-day exploits, and there's not much you can do about that. But generally it comes from, there's always zero-day exploits. There's no way around it. As they say, the only secure computer is one that's turned off and not connected to a network, and that's absolutely true. So with security, we have something called managing the risk, or you just don't want to be the low-hanging fruit. So as we go along, is there a way to totally 100% secure your website, your WordPress website? Absolutely not. However, you can take some actions to not be the low-hanging fruit, meaning let's say, there's a bot network that's scanning for vulnerable sites, or there's just a script kiddie that's going around, or I guess it wouldn't be a script kiddie. Well, yeah, there could be running scripts, just a hacker going from site to site to site, looking to brute force into websites, right? If you don't show up in those lists in the first place, that your website's vulnerable, because then you have a good chance of nobody really messing with you um, at all. Because here's how it works. A lot of times, what happens is malicious actors have scripts, or programs or whatever you want to call it, scanners, probes, whatever, that go and let's say they have a vulnerability for WordPress 5.2.3. I don't even know what the current version of WordPress is, honestly. I think it's 6 point something. I have no idea. What they'll do is they'll use a tool like Shodan if they want a GUI interface, or they'll just write a script that'll go and probe and look for websites that are running WordPress. What did I say? 5.2.3, whatever I said. And then they'll go screw with those websites. If you don't show up on those lists in the first place, they're not going to mess with you in the overwhelming majority of cases, right? I said the dozens, maybe hundreds, I don't even know of websites I've worked with. I've had zero people come back to me after we've locked down their site, and I'll go with over you. I know we talked about the premium plugin and all that stuff. I'll give you some free ideas on how to do stuff. I've never had one person come back to me and had a site compromised. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I haven't had that experience. So the bottom line is you want to not be the low hanging fruit. So okay, so you're only as strong as your weakest link. So what this means is if now your website only has one user, if I remember correctly. I started this hours ago, so I can't totally remember. Let me pull it up just to make sure I'm thinking properly. We go to users, because this is something I checked about. Yeah, you have the one user. So what this basically means is if you have a website and you have multiple users and you have 5 admin accounts and your password's super secure and the other admins are super secure, but there's one admin whose password is like password, then all they need is to get and compromise that one account. It also means not just from a user point of view, but from a plugin point of view, from a theme point of view. If you have one insecure plugin, that could compromise all your other plugins. Now it goes well beyond also, now you're on SiteGround, right? So there's a lot of things you're not managing. You have to trust SiteGround is patching databases, and for the most part, doing some PHP configurations. There's some PHP stuff you could do if you want to get into that. Let me know. But they're updating the security patches on the web server, on the operating system, et cetera, et cetera. So You can't control that. But the bottom line is if there's one user account that's weak, that's possibly could compromise your whole environment. Have offsite backups for ransomware purposes. Now you do have Updraft, which is great, which is exactly what I use. And I can see you have a little rotation schedule, which is good. And we'll get into this more towards the bottom. But every month or so, you might want to take one of these and put it onto like a thumb drive or something. And we'll get into that below, why that is. So it's not just WordPress. Like I said, you're on SiteGround, but if you did happen to my company does um, website hosting, so we have to take all this into account. We have to take into account the operating system. We have to take into account, like I said, the web server, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, if you want your host your website through us, I'd be happy to help you out and give you a really good price too. So if you are going to do it on your own, just go to these websites and look through these, sign up for these mailing lists, and you can be alerted if there's any product in your stack that has a vulnerability. You'll be alerted to it, right? And then you can use free and open source scanner like Nessus or OpenVAS if you really want to do like some more, I guess I wouldn't say penetration testing, but some more advanced scanning, right? Um, Google your website, see if it shows up on on any hack sites. I did, yours didn't, so your website seems to be good for now. But something I would just create as we go along, I'll say something you want to do regularly. Just put together a monthly reminder or whatever it might be, whatever you feel comfortable doing. I usually do things weekly and monthly, depending on the task. And just search for my website. Now, if you're confident enough, you go on the dark web too and see if you website shows up there. Gets to be a little more complex. I think it's kind of overkill. But if that's something you want to do, that's something you can do. That's something I would just do, like I said, once a month manually. There's no like one tool you can use to have a full secure site, right? I mean, there's some manual work that's required if you want to maintain a secure environment. And subscribe to the free newsletter over at WordFence. Actually, I haven't sent them. Let me see what's going on here. I haven't sent a message out in a while. Let me pause this real quick because I used to send it's not just security alerts, it's also good tutorial stuff, educational stuff. I started in security and as a kind I'm in the late 80s. Not professionally, but as a kid. So I've been doing it a while and I'm still learning. I'm learning stuff all the time. I don't know a thousandth of the stuff that's out there. But this is WordPress specific security stuff. For some reason, I'm not sending out it as much recently, but it's all kinds of good stuff. So we're just gonna go through some high level stuff, then we'll get into more specific things. Um, Now, if this is something you could take my checklist here, and this is something you could offer to your client. I mean, if I could do it for you, but if you wanted to offer this stuff to your clients as a service, this is something you could do too. There's not any magic to it. This is basically just things that I check. Now, you do need to have some, personal experience, um, to understand things more in depth at times, but just to do an audit, or especially if there's problems, but if there's just to do an audit, you probably can get by with just, general technical knowledge. So use strong hosting provider, password, and routinely change it. So this is just common sense, right? On your hosting provider SiteGround, make sure you're using a password and constantly change it. Good practice is every 30 days. There's no mechanism, as far as I know, with SiteGround that'll force you to change it every 30 days, but it's something you should do every 30 days, even just every 90 days, right? And of course, don't use the same password at SiteGround and WordPress and Gmail and your bank and Amazon because if that what if that password gets compromised and shared on the dark web, they could access all your different platforms. That's kind of common sense. It's annoying, and most people don't do it, but it's something you definitely should do. It's something I definitely do. Are all FTP accounts valid and created with strong passwords? You don't have any FTP accounts, so if you do create an FTP account, I use calendar reminders like probably more than anybody in the world to remind me of stuff. If I create an FTP account because I'm working on a task or I'm working with somebody like a contractor or something, and I create it for them because we're doing a site migration or whatever it might be, I'll create a Google Calendar reminder in 2 weeks to say remove this FTP account because we do 1,000 things per day and you just forget. Like, we get busy and we forget these things even exist. So, um, and if you do have an FTP account, use a strong password, obviously. Same thing for SSH accounts. You don't have any, so you're good. Set up downtime monitoring. So I use Uptime Robot. I have a paid solution I use for client sites, but for a free solution, you can use Uptime Robot. Basically, just create a free account. It's going to probe your website every, I think, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and see if it's up. If it's up, that's good. If it's down, could be that your hosting provider is just doing maintenance or something, which hosting providers actually do more maintenance than you think without telling people and bring your site up and down, just for a few seconds. But from an SEO point of view, that's not good. You don't want your website to be down ever. But the point is if your site's down for an extended period of time, it could be your site got compromised and they're in the process of doing something with it. You could also do like, I think it's visual ping is the name. You can, let me just show you real quick. So it's not just, is it up? Sometimes it can be up, but what if it's defaced? So you can do visual ping. And last I checked, I have a free account. I have a paid service for this kind of stuff. It will basically, it doesn't show you. I thought it would be a little video. It basically will look for, let me just do this. Let's put in my website here. While it's happening, I'm going to get a drink. Okay. Well, oh no, it's not loading, but basically, there we go. You can say, check this region. If anything changes in this region, notify me. And this is strictly, not strictly, but primarily for defacements, right? If something changes, like if they add a little like, swear word up here or whatever might happen. So your site can be up and still be having problems, right? Um, so that's what that is. Use two-factor authentication if it's available. So SiteGround does offer two-factor authentication. I don't know. I did check because obviously we just did a collaborative thing, and I don't think that has two-factor authentication unless I did it with my SiteGround account for that one I just signed up with to access this. So I haven't done anything with that account, but use two-factor authentication, meaning, you get a code on your phone or you use Google Authenticator or you have a hardware key, something. Use Google Search Console. So Google Search Console is mainly for, it's the dashboard configuration slash everything tool for Google search. But one feature that it has from a security point of view is you'll get security alerts if Google detects anything off. So that's something you want to sign up for and get alerts. Routinely scan for malware and vulnerabilities. Now, on SiteGround, they're doing a lot of this stuff under the covers. You don't really have to worry about it that much. However, it's something I would do. Still go do a free security scan weekly or monthly. I honestly do it monthly. Some people do it weekly. Um, I think it's great to have multiple scanners checking an environment. So, for example, like I use Solid WP. You might hear me call it iTheme Security Pro because it was called that up until what, 3 or 4 months ago, maybe. It could be longer. I don't even know. But I also like to use another engine manually from time to time to see, because that my one tool may not catch something that other tools catch, right? So that's the point, is just use another manual tool when you can. You are using SSL everywhere, and there's no mixed content, and your whoas record came up good. So these are more advanced options. Things can break. Disable directory browsing. That's good. And you can use Solid WP security, Solid WP, what's it called? I don't think I typed that right, actually. I think it's called, let's find Solid, like I said, yeah, Solid WP, Solid WP, Solid WP security. Okay. Disable file editing. So that looks good. You pass that. Install. You're not gonna be able to do this because on SiteGround, I don't think they allow you to install WP CLI, which is basically, being able to manage WordPress from a command line interface. Why this is important from a security point of view is if your site gets compromised and you can't do anything from a GUI point of view because they may have totally locked you out or disabled it, at least you can go to the command line and remove users, change themes, disable plugins, remove plugins, etc., etc. Change your WordPress data rate prefix. Looks like you did that. Restrict access to your dashboard based on IP address. This is something I would definitely do. I have a YouTube video on this on my Norzer YouTube channel. I can forward to you if you want to see how to do it, or I can do it for you. It's just editing a couple lines of code in htaccess. What this means is, let's say you have two-factor authentication on WordPress and somebody somehow circumvents that, and let's say they somehow get your password. Let's say for whatever reason they're able to get into your backend. You're going to have a list of IP addresses that are whitelisted that are able to do stuff on your backend. So even if they're able to get into your backend, they're not going to be able to do anything because their IP address isn't whitelisted. If you travel a lot, this can be annoying because you have to SSH into the box first, whitelist that IP address, or go into SiteGround. It doesn't have to be SSH. You could use the GUI file manager and the site tools in SiteGround and add an IP address. But this is one of the, if you could do two things, this would be one of the things I would do, and the other thing we'll get to down below. You don't have error reporting or debugging turned on, which is good. Why this matters is if you have that turned on, what people that are looking to do bad things is they'll look for this setting on and they'll intentionally create errors, and those errors will sometimes reveal some revealing information that'll help them enumerate the platform more. It'll tell them plugin versions, it'll tell them usernames, et cetera, right? So you don't have it turned on, so you have nothing to worry about. So if you do ever do a report error debugging because you're troubleshooting an issue, just make sure you only have it on while you're doing it because it is a security issue. Disable login hints. So basically, what this means is, and you have it, you're good. So, but I'll explain to you what it is if you go to log in and it says enter username and password, if you want it, if somebody types in a wrong username or password, you don't want it to say wrong username or wrong password because you don't want to tell the person which of the two is the problem. You just want it to say invalid login. Yours does that, so you're good. Hide WordPress version numbers. This is one of the biggest pieces of in hide signatures, right? So there's some great plugins. I have an agency licensed WP Ghost. Let me see if I can just, I don't think it's on AppSumo anymore. Let's see if it is. No, but sign up for this list to be notified if it goes back on. You can use a limited version of the other one. But what it does, you can read through it. It's a really cool plugin. And this is one plugin I would install, but you can read through it here. But basically, what it does, as much as possible. So, and I'm actually just migrated my site for my company, but I'll give you an idea. If you're familiar, and it's going to be slow because I'm logged in, so it's not going to be fast. See, load. Because when you're logged in, as you can see, it gets real slow. Anyway, on WordPress, actually, I think I have this done. I just actually migrated a few days back. So you can see here, there's no WP admin, there's no WP content directory, there's no, you see it's storage directory. I'm emulating in the code with some rewrites. It's actually emulating if somebody scanned this platform, I think it's emulating like Joomla 6 or something. It might even be Drupal. I don't even know. But so basically, it's a quick rewrite. It slows the site down a little bit, maybe like 1%, but it's no big deal. But the point is, if somebody's scanning your site and they're looking for plugins, that they know plugins are in certain directories. For example, they know plugins are in WP content. I think it's maybe it's admin, whatever the heck it is. WP content slash plugin version 3 or whatever. If that directory structure doesn't exist in the first place, all those scripts that detect the plugins that specific way aren't going to work. First of all, they're going to think that I'm running Joomla or Drupal, whatever this detecting comes back in, and those scripts are going to bomb out, and they're not going to be able to do anything. So you can see there's no WP content, no WP admin, et cetera, right? So that's the primary thing that plugin does. It does a lot more. Both these do it. This one has like a free option. Oops, it's no link there, but just search for WP hide. Oh, there it goes. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Anyway, um, whoops. WP hide and security enhancer. So yeah, it's really powerful. That's one of let's put stars. This would be another third powerful thing I would do because it goes back to what I said. You want to obfuscate your signatures. You want to obfuscate that you're using WordPress. So you want to obfuscate that you're using WordPress altogether. At a minimum, you just want to say WordPress and not WordPress version, right? Because if somebody just sees WordPress and they have a list of another 100 that say, WordPress version 5.2 specifically or whatever, they're going to go right to that. So here's just a tool if you want to play around. Like for example, Shodan, it's kind of like a search engine for servers. You can see I search for so let's say I had a vulnerability for Apache. I just want to show you how easy this is. If I had a vulnerability for Apache 2.4.3, the web server, I could just search for it here and look at the headers. This server here, 199.80.63 is using Apache 2.4.3, or at least it's passing that back in the headers. They could be wise in passing and obfuscating what they really are, but you can see these. If I was going to screw around with a vulnerability, these are the servers I would go with. If yours is hidden and it's throwing back, that your Microsoft Internet Information Server or whatever the heck it's called, it's not going to show up in this list in the first place. So this is manually how you do it. There's scripts that do this exact same thing. There's just, I don't know if it's billions, but millions. It's got to be billions of scripts and probes that are just constantly going looking for vulnerable platforms. So you can imagine they could do this with WordPress. They could do this looking for, I guess plugins wouldn't return in the HTTP header, but this is just one way, right? So there's multiple ways to get things. And we'll get more into this as well as we go along. So that's Shodan. So now you'd have, so I got an agency license for WP Ghost. I got it when it was on AppSumo, and now you'd have to buy it. I don't even think it's like, let's look. I guess it's probably like 70% off. For one site, we're talking $30 a year. I think it's well worth it. And if you wanted to offer it for your clients, 192. Now I got an AppSumo when it was a one-time purchase of 250 unlimited for lifetime, right? So I never have to pay again. That's why I love AppSumo deals. Even though sometimes, the products, they're new products, sometimes they don't last and they die, but I think it's well worth it. Delete the README WP config sim. So these are just dump like files that get thrown on after a WordPress install. Um, why this is important is the README HTML, a very specific README HTML goes on a very specific version of WordPress. So let's say WordPress version 5.9.2, whatever the heck it may be, has a very specific README file with it. And there's scripts you can run that'll say, look for the README file on on all WordPress websites that have this exact text, right? Because that exact text is going to correlate with the specific WordPress version. So that's just another way they can determine what version of WordPress is on there. So, and there might be multiple ways they're probing this stuff. They could be looking for a README file. They also could be looking for, signatures and the WordPress version number, looking in other ways. And, they can maybe do 5 different probes. If 4 of the 5 come back saying it's WordPress 5.9.1, there's an 80% probability. That's better than a 100% probability because maybe the hacker only wants to mess with results that come back as 100% probability. They don't want to waste their time with sites that come back as, 80, 60, or 40% probability. So yeah, you did this good, but sometimes they get put back on. So I would just create a cron job that goes and deletes these just daily, even if they don't exist. And you can use solid WP for this as well. Moved WordPress files outside of the public directory. Some people suggest doing this. It's more advanced if you want to do it. It's a little bit more secure. It's not something I normally do. I think it's a little bit too paranoid because if they get into the platform, it doesn't really matter where those files are, in my opinion. I understand the argument. I just don't think it's worth it. Go into hardened PHP. We can get into that. There's more things we could do. Okay, so in this document, you'll see like little notes here. These are like plugins you could use. So I talked about in chat, I use Solid WP for a lot of things. And why it is, it's like you can use this free plugin. At least it was free the last I checked. It may not be free now, but Solid WP does so many of these things. Whereas if you had free plugins, you'd have to download a lot of little ones. And this used to be how it was for me, you know, 5 years ago before WordFence has been around for a while. Other security plugins have been around for a while, but they really didn't incorporate all these different features so much as they have in the last few years. So now I think iThemes has got, and I think I'm kind of moving towards another plugin called Security Ninja, but I'm not at that point yet because I don't think it does quite everything that I need yet. But anyway, so beware of overlapping security tools. So what this means is if you go to your plugins and I just search for security, you have Security Optimizer, which is SiteGrounds. And SiteGround is solid. Then you have WordFence as well. So you generally only want to have one of these. At a minimum, I would go through these and make sure you don't have overlapping features enabled for both, right? And also back at your hosting provider. So you generally don't want to have both these. You want to have one or the other. That's what that means. So you have to go through it. I'm not, a WordPress security expert. I'm not a SiteGround security expert, but that's something you can just look through and maybe even contact SiteGround support and ask, is there, I'm sure somebody else has had this question, has posed this question to them, and they probably have an answer. Can I run WordPress security alongside their security plugin? If so, is there anything I should specifically enable or disable? Oh, and then there's a WordPress error here. So it's something you want to look at up here. And you got, this isn't security, but something you might want to You don't need WP Optimize running at all time. Well, you might have it scheduled to clean the database, but it looks like I would probably just deactivate WP Optimize. I think WP Rocket has its own database optimizer, I think. Maybe that's just isn't good enough. I don't even know. So this is something I would do once a month, once every couple weeks. Go look at your status on Tools Site Health Status and see if there's anything there. Right now, there's one thing there, and it is something about, I don't remember. Let's see. Your scheduled event is late. Okay, so find out what that is. Oh yeah, so some WP Rocket something, and you should use persistent object cache. Okay, so SiteGround has its own performance plugin too. You must not have object cache turned on. It's something I would turn on. Not a security thing, but a performance thing. That's something I would look at. Is PHP up to date? Yeah, it is, and I'll show you how you can tell this. With this same tool, you can go to Info, then go to Server, and you can see the versions for a lot of the underlying software, like your Linux version, PHP version, um, SSL, Apache. I thought it actually had the Apache version here. Interesting. But just because it's not here doesn't mean it can't be probed in other ways. Let's do this. Just out of curiosity. I'm not going to waste too much time on it if I'm not seeing it instantly. Whoops. Whoops. So these are the HTTP headers. Um, you'll see Cloudflare here, which is good. Yeah, I'm not seeing it off the top of my head, but doesn't really matter. There's a ton of different ways to get this stuff. Okay. Never give your main username and password to a contractor. So this is always a test I have when people hire me to look at their websites for security. Is I'm always curious if they're going to give me their main admin password. You don't want to do that because they can lock you out. Now, of course, you could get back in through support or go to the OS and lock them out, but it's just a good practice. Well, from an auditing point of view, also, you want to be able to see if changes are made, who's making them, and what that user account is, right? And what changes are being made. So you have the same user ID doing it all, you can't really definitively say it's them unless you know the time you're on and we're on, etc. So it's the best practice just to give separate user IDs out. Then also go back and set a reminder to delete a couple hours later. Change the admin username because from a brute force point of view, meaning you're just trying credentials over and over again, whether it's manual or from a scripting type of thing with a delay or something, they're going to try admin because people know that is the default username, and you changed it, so that's good. Does every user still need access? So another thing, does you only have one user, so it's no big deal. So solid W, and I don't work for solid WP, I promise you, even though I bring them up a lot, is it's going to send you an alert if somebody's been inactive for over 30 days. It's definitely critically important for anybody that has admin access. And does everybody with admin access need admin access? Again, you're one user, nothing to worry about. And you see here, go to setting users to see this in WordPress. You know that though. Is your admin email correct? So just check, right? A lot of emails, especially if you use a security plugin, you're gonna get a lot of email alerts. They're annoying, but they're necessary. With Solid WP, I keep saying it wrong. You can get a digest to minimize those emails, a daily digest. That's what I do as much as possible. But it's even though it's annoying, it's critical that the email address is correct. Use unique passwords. We talked about that earlier. Don't use the same password across multiple sites. It's common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people do it. Disable anyone who can register. That's good. For strong passwords. So you can tell people to use strong passwords, but they're not going to. You're going to have somebody use password 123. So you can force strong passwords by, using solid WP security, or there's another plugin called if you just want that one feature, no weak passwords. It's not going to allow them to save their password if it's a simple password. So two-factor authentication. I did see that it's disabled for you. This is another. If there's one thing, I think this is accurate what I'm saying. If there's one thing I would do, if you only could make one change, it would be to enable two-factor authentication. And so you can do that for free with Solid WP Security. Here's some other plugins you can look into as well. As you can see, there's just so many different plugins. If you can get one plugin to do everything, I would just get one plugin to do everything. Now, if you want to do it yourself, let me do this. YouTube, Norzer, iTheme Security. See, it used to be called iTheme Security Pro. I made this video probably a year ago or so. So it's pretty much the same thing. I just realized my headphones are on. I hope you can hear me talking so I don't have to redo this again. Um, if you want to do the configuration yourself of iTheme Security Pro, this is basically how to do it. So this is a couple years ago even. So I'll just put this in here. I'll just keep it as iThemes, even though it's the same thing. They basically rebranded. Change the login page. So you don't want the login page to be WP admin, WP login, etc., because everybody knows that's the login place. That's where they're going to brute force from. So you want to change that to, like instead of slash WP admin, it could be slash, Johnny's login or something, whatever it is, something not so obvious. Is it going to solve all the problems? No, but again, this basically want to not prevent you from being the low hanging fruit, and all of these steps, if uh, as a whole, are going to help you accomplish that goal. So you can do that with solid W security. If not, you can use these plugins. Now you could just modify the code yourself, but plugins are easier. Limit login attempts. So if after somebody WordPress probably does this, if after somebody tries to log in 3 times in a row with bad password, it's going to lock them out. Whatever. Solid WP security does this. I would add CAPTCHA to the login. You may not need to do this, but if you're noticing you're getting a lot of failed login attempts, if you look at the logs, or you download a plugin and or looking that can notify you of these failed login attempts. If you start to see a lot, you can actually add CAPTCHA to the login page. There's multiple ways to do that. You can use Solid WP security. Yeah, I typed this wrong. I need to fix this. Sign up for Have I Been Owned? If you're so just see here, it's a free sign up. It's a mailing list. If your email address is found on the dark web, you're going to get notified about it. So just sign up for that. So routinely back up your site and have at least backups from 2 different sources. I do backups on a hosting provider and I use the free version of Updraft, which you're doing. Keep backups from at least 5 days, 1 per week, 12 per year. That's kind of a standard enterprise backup. I should say basic enterprise backup plan. You want to, and the reason you might think it's kind of crazy to keep one for longer than 3 months because, or whatever it might be. The reason is these ransomware people are getting pretty smart and they're realizing people have backups. So if they can compromise a site, they'll just stay there for a few weeks or a few months and then notify the person because they'll know your backups have expired. Would it be annoying to have to go back to a backup from 6 months ago? It would, but it'd be a lot less annoying than having to rebuild your site from scratch. So I usually have backups going back. It's not an exact science, like 5 years. But I think if you have one going back a year or two. So you don't need it every week for a year or two. But as you get to like months and months old, just have one once a month or once every 3 months, something like that. So just manually download it from Updraft and put it on Google Drive or on a thumb drive or something like that. So keep WordPress plugins up to date. Looks like you're doing that. Solid WP can do this, as can this and this. It just has more flexibility. Yeah, you didn't have a lot of plugins, so there wasn't a lot to check here. Is you when I'm this is a good practice. Is I don't like to use plugins that haven't been updated in over a year or have 1,000 installs. And then I also look to if it's a plugin I'm not familiar with, like if it's Elementor or something, I obviously know it's popular and it's as secure as any other plugin's possibly going to be, right? But if it's an obscure plugin, you want to read the support messages and see what people are saying. But if something hasn't been updated in over a year and it's not tested with your version of WordPress and or it has under 1,000 installs, it's something you might want to think twice about installing. Now, sometimes there's only one plugin and you don't have an option, but just know that's a risk that you're taking, and it might be worth hiring somebody to create that plugin for you. Verify all plugins are being enabled and being used. So just go through your plugins. Are they all being used? If not, get rid of them. Because as we saw, the most common attack vector on WordPress sites are plugins. So if you can do one thing, I shouldn't say one thing, a thing you can do is don't have plugins enabled that are not being used. You don't want to increase that footprint. Check if your plugins or themes have any known vulnerabilities. If you don't have any, I check with 2 different scanners. Everything seems to be okay. Now, if there's a 0-day floating around, there's no way to know that, of course. or if there's plugins that haven't been, I'm sorry, vulnerabilities that haven't been revealed publicly. See how much further we got. Yeah, we're getting to the end. So we're at 34 minutes. So hopefully get through this in the next 5 minutes. Use a theme that's being maintained. You're using Astra, which I love, so that's good. Delete unused themes, which you have. You have, I think, the one 2024 laying around. That's fine. You just don't want all these obscure themes laying around. Disable the REST API for anyone logged in. This is something I definitely do. You definitely would do. So you can do this. You can do it with this individual plugin, or you can do it within solid WP. You don't want to expose. You want to expose as little information about your environment as possible. If somebody's going to do an API call to your environment to get to query it for some information, you want to make sure they have to log in. And if they can't log in, then they're not going to get that information. So make sure you have logging set up. So there's a great plugin called WP Activity Log. There's a free limited version, at least last I checked. I haven't checked in a while because I use the Solid WP Activity Log monitor that's built into their product, which is good enough. Basically just shows you, user Joe installed this plugin. User Bob changed this setting. Now, WP Activity Log has a premium version, and the free version is really good. It gives you a lot of really nuanced information, but at least would have something. And there's probably others. These are just, this is what I use. This is probably the most common one. Last I checked, and when I say last I checked, I mean probably 2 years ago. So it's something I definitely would have. Get notified when somebody logs in or attempts to log in. So this actually is a plugin that hasn't been updated in multiple years. And I sadly just deleted it from my website because I wouldn't be practicing what I preach. I like to know when people try to log in and fail, and I like to know if an admin logs in, because if it's not me and it's not somebody that I approve, then I know something's going on. So at least I'll be notified right away. So I'm actually probably going to create the plugin, not me, but one of my developers is going to create a plugin called something similar to that, hopefully in the next few months, because it's a critical tool to have to know if somebody with admin access is logging into. There's a couple plugins out there, but a lot of them haven't been updated in a long time. Seems like it should be pretty easy to write, but I don't know why there isn't one. And then, yeah, here's my tutorial on I think that's how to install Solid WP Security. So just have a web application firewall, and that's kind of limiting to say application firewall because these plugins do so much more nowadays. It's so much more than the firewall. It's the file integrity checker, not the file integrity checker, the file checker. If a file changes on the operating system, and I think I wrote that. That should be down here somewhere. Here, it's the next one. All the two-factor authentication, all this stuff, right? So I have this one, and this is the one I have the agency license for. You have WordFence. I think you have the free version, so I think it's pretty limiting. I would invest in whether it's this or whatever. I would take the time and I think it is worth investing in one of these. So file change plugin. So I use this one. Now here's another individual plugin you can use. And what's good about this is it'll daily monitor the operating system. And if any files change, you're going to get notified about it. Why it's important. Let's say somebody compromises your site and makes a change in a configuration file. You're going to get notified about it. Now you exclude the caching directories because those are always getting modified, right? Or if you update a plugin, just know you're going to get a lot of updates that day. But if something happens, so you might not want to do automatic updates until you might just want to handle all your updates on a specific day, like every other Friday or something like that, right? So you can see these things can coexist. Disable XML RPC. The only thing I only plugin I know that ever used XML RPC, and there's more. The only one I used was wasn't even a plugin. It was a tool, a download called LiveWriter. You could write your blog posts on WordPress on like a Microsoft Word looking program, and it would auto update to the blog. But most people, I think, Jetpack might use this still, but I think most plugins now use the REST API. So I would disable this for sure. So that's it. There's definitely some action items here. Right now, your website I don't see any immediate issues. Um, if you want to host your website through me, let me know. I'm just rolling out a new billing system and all this, so I can give you a pretty good discount if you want to help me test it out. Um, and if you need any help with SEO or want me to do this for some of your clients, let me know. Feel free to use this template to do it on your own. If you need help with SEO, performance, any of that stuff, let me know. Our website design, if you want to offer that to your clients, we can handle that too. Like a white label type thing. So yeah, hope this helps. Hope you found it useful. And Yeah, let me reach out and let me know what you think. All right, see ya. Thank you.